Today's lesson is the circle. So it's very important to be here today and tomorrow because I'm going to continue with the circle. And I see that every single person is here. And I will hope to see everybody here tomorrow. So put the circle as your title. The circle. And the first thing that I'm going to talk to you about are some specific names inside the circle. So some lines that you need to know the names for. So a circle looks something like this, right? A circle, infinity, a circle goes around. I'm going to check if I have another blue marker. Please draw it. So you need a nice circle. There we go. And in the circle, you need to know that the point in the middle is called the center point. So center point. Pretty easy, the center, and it's a point. The first line that I'm going to introduce you to is the line that goes from the center point to the edge of the circle. Now, the name for this line is the radius. Okay, so the radius. And there are millions of radiuses. So I could have made my radius here as I could make my radius here. As I could make the radius here. It's just a line that goes from the center to the edge. And they're equidistant. Equidistance means they're equal distance. From here to here is the same distance from here to here. So it's the radius. Okay? Then there's another line that's twice as big as the radius. It goes from one side of the circle through the middle and to the other side. It's a very straight line that does something like this. And it's twice the radius. And that's called the diameter. So I'm going to look at the word diameter. And that's the longer of the two lines. So when we talk about the circle, there's a few things you have to know. You need to know the center point. You have to know the radius. You need to know the diameter. Probably the most important things are those three. Knowing this helps in a lot of situations. There is a line that you have to know. It's called the chord, and it's a line that goes from one edge to the other edge, but not through the middle. If it's through the middle, it's called the diameter. If it's not going through the middle, then it's called the chord. C-H-O-R-D. And it could be anywhere. There could be a chord here. Could be a chord here. As long as it doesn't go through the center point, it's a chord. If it goes from the center to the edge, it's called the radius. If it goes from one side through the middle all the way to the other side, which means that I have almost two radiuses, right? Or I actually have two radiuses combined, becomes the diameter. Is that okay? So there's this relationship between the radius and the diameter. What is this relationship that they have? Who can tell me the relationship between the radius and the diameter? Yes? Well, what's the relationship? Meaning, like, if I told you about the radius, how many do I need of those to become the diameter? So 2 radiuses would equal to 1 diameter, the diameter. Okay, so 2 radiuses equal to the diameter. And how about if I said, hey, what do I do to the diameter to get the radius? What could you do to the diameter to get the radius? Divide by 2. It's half the diameter. If I cut it in half, if I divide by 2, will give me the radius. So the relationship is there. They need each other. How could I remember? So a lot of students are like, which one's the radius? Is it the longer line, the shorter line? Oh, which one's the diameter? Is it the long? How could we have a way, like a little trick, to remember which one's the radius and which one's the diameter? So here's my circle, and I give you this line here. How can I remember? Is that the radius or is that the diameter? Yes? Okay, that's a good one. I have another one. Yeah, the word radius is the shorter of the two words. So that's how I would remember that the radius is the shorter word and the shorter line. The longer word so for the longer line would be double the radius, and this would be the diameter. Diameter. So longer word, longer line. Shorter word, shorter line. So let's just do a few examples. Let's do a few examples where I say, hey, how about if I said the radius was 5? How much would the diameter be? 10. Radius is 6. What would the diameter be? 12. I need 2 of these. 12. If the radius was 8, what would the diameter be? 16. So it's 2 times the radius. 2 small ones equals the big one. Now what if I gave you diameter? So I said, oh, diameter is 20. What would the radius be? Let me just point to you. 10. If I told you the diameter was 18, radius would be? Diameter is the big one. I need to cut it in half to make it small. Radius is 9. If I tell you the diameter is 30, the radius would be good. 15. So you see how you could go back and forth, back and forth? What I'm going to ask you to do, because we're going to do it together, is turn to page, and it's very simple, so we're going to do it together. We're going to turn to the first page. We're going to keep our notes open, and we're going to practice using page 77. So we're going to read it together and answer it in our books. Ready? No, we're going to correct it in our red books. Okay, so we're going to do page 77 together. I'm going to review the circle and the angles within the circle. So here's my circle. Here's the center of my circle. And if my circle had begun here at 0 degrees and would move all the way to this over here, what angle would I have? It would be 90 degrees. So this would be a 90 degrees. Now we call this angles when we are talking about 2 lines that meet here. This is an angle. In a circle, we call it central angle. So please write down in your notes that this angle is called the central angle. And I use the abbreviation CA to describe the central angle. So this is just a little piece of information that when we see tests and quizzes and you see either CA or you see something like this, and I put a little, this is the central angle. It's the CA. And I usually give it to you, or I ask to find the central angle of this circle. And that's going to come in a couple of lessons. So for now, just know that I call it central angle. So right here is central angle of 90. If I were to go from 0 and go all the way to this spot here and make it straight, what would this angle be?
180.
180. And if I would continue, so I would start at 0, go to 90, then I'm at 180, and I would go to this angle, which means that I would now have a line here, and I would ask you for this central angle. Who thinks they know how much that is? 270. I went from here to here. And then I want to close my circle. I want to have a full circle and go all the way and meet up. What's a full circle equal to? 360 degrees. So you've got part of a circle, a partial circle, you've got a half a circle, you've got 3/4 of a circle, and then you've got a full circle at 360. The center point is there. We've got lines inside that we know, the radius. We know another one called the diameter. The radius is the shorter one. The diameter is the longer line. Make sense? We're good? We're going to continue with page 77. So the next lesson, which is just like a continuation. So first we did finding the radius, finding the diameter, the relationship between the diameter and the radius, what happens. But now I'm going to ask you how to find the circumference. Does anybody know what the circumference is? What is the circumference? What am I talking about when I say the word circumference? Yes. The circle. But what about the circle? Yes. Yes. What about all of the circle? The measurement of the circle, which is actually the perimeter of the circle. So if I ask you for the perimeter of the circle, which means that I want to measure this circle, but it's hard to measure a circle. We don't have circular rulers. Now, if the circle was made out of a string and I cut it, and the string was laid out like this, I'd be able to use my ruler to measure this, correct? But it's not. And there's a lot of times where our circle is not made out of a string. And we don't have a string around to do it. So many years ago, a very smart man came up with a formula. Who knows the formula for the circumference of a circle, which we all know is the perimeter, right? We all know circumference really means the perimeter, but the fancy word for a circle, the perimeter of a circle, is the circumference. Anybody know the formula for circumference?
Pi.
It's not pi, but we're getting there. So circumference, C stands for circumference. Wait a second. Equals, what does the circumference equal? So circumference equals, there is a pi, times, and now try to guess, is it the diameter or is it the radius? Who says radius? Who says diameter? It is diameter. Good guess. So what is the formula for the circumference? What is the formula? It is circumference equals pi. Now we need to know what this pi is. We say the word pi. We actually spell pi, not like pie, like we're going to eat a pie. But pi is the pi. And does anybody know what it's worth? What would we, if I had to tell you a number value to this symbol? Now the symbol doesn't have to look like this. If you guys just want to do this, it's easier. Go ahead. Mine's a little fancier. What's the symbol number? Yes. It is 3.14. Good. So some of you even know that the pi is equal to 3.14. And this letter represents the word diameter. Okay? So when I ask you, hey, what's the circumference to this circle, I have to give you some information. So we'll start off with question number 1. Question number 1 says, find circumference if the diameter is equal to 8. I'm just making up a question, and I'm asking you for the perimeter of a circle whose diameter is 8. What's the first thing that I'm going to want from you? The first thing I'm going to want from you. Am I going to want you to grab your calculator? No. What's the first thing I'm going to want you to do? Yes. Write the formula. Am I going to ask you for the formula every single time? Yes. Will you get it wrong if you don't have it? Yes. So even if your answer is right, I'm going to give it to you wrong if I don't see a formula. So I want to see C equals pi d. That's what I want to see first. And what's the question asking me for? The circumference. So it's this that I'm looking for. Do I have any information to plug in here? Well, pi I will always have, because pi doesn't change. It's 3.14. And I think they gave us the diameter. So I'm actually going to multiply by 8. And if I take my calculator now, this is the time to take your calculator. You do 3.14 times 8, and that'll give us the answer for the circumference to a circle with a diameter of 8. Who can give me an answer? How much? 25? 25.12. So voila, our first circumference, our first perimeter to a circle. Yay! Let's do question number 2. So I'm putting question number 2, and this time I'm going to use this circle for question 2. And I'm going to show you this line here. I'm going to say, hey, by the way, this line here is 15 centimeters. What's the circumference to this circle? What's the first thing you're going to do? Write the formula. So first thing I want to see is C equals pi d. Then you're going to go look for the information. Well, what is it that I'm asking you for? I'm asking you for circumference. So this is going to be the unknown, the blank, the one we're going to have to figure out. But we definitely know pi. Pi is 3.14. And we definitely know that the diameter is 15. So you would plug it in like this.
47.
And you would write the answer of 47.1. Yes? Yes. Let's do one more. Let's do one more like this.
Can you do it with the radius?
Yes, you can do it with the radius because you know that you multiply the radius by 2. So question number 3, some of you are already ahead of me. Question number 3 is going to say find the circumference, find C, if the radius is 10. So what's the first thing that I want you to do? Yes? First thing I want you to do. C equals pi d. Now, when you go to look at this formula, you're like, hey, they want me to find the circumference, but they didn't give me the diameter that I need. What's up with this person? Why aren't they giving me diameter? I didn't give you diameter, but I definitely gave you something. Something to find the diameter. So then I'd go here and say, why did she give me radius? Oh, she gave me radius because I know how to find diameter. So if I gave you the radius of 10, the diameter is 20. So radius is the small one. Diameter is the big one. So we need 2 of them. Agreed? So radius is 10. Diameter is 20. Don't forget, radius is small. Diameter has to be bigger. Always think like that. Small radius, little small one. Diameter, oh, it's so long the word. Has to be bigger. What did I do? I doubled it. And now, I take the 20, I place it where the D is. I put 3.14 times it, and I'm going to get the answer to the radius using 62.8. Let me do this in blue, but you all get it. 62.8 is the answer to that. Yes? Okay, we're going to go on a short pause. I'm going to work on page 78 with you. And then we're going to come back to do what somebody asked me. Hey, miss, are you ever going to ask us for the diameter? Yes. I will give you circumference. And I'm going to ask you to work backwards to find the diameter using what we've been learning for the last few months, which is called algebra. So stay tuned. I shall be back. The next thing we're going to do is called working backwards, or at least that's what I call it, working backwards. And why do I call that working backwards? Because now I'm going to give you information that's not directly that easy. So for example, C, which is circumference, equals to the pi times the diameter. I'm not going to say, hey, here's the diameter, what's the circumference? I'm going to give you the circumference and tell you to work backwards to get the diameter. So if I tell you, hey guys, question number 1 is that the circumference equals to 100, what is the diameter? You're going to take the same formula, use the number 100 to replace the circumference, because that's the information I gave you. This time I gave you the circumference. I'm like, here's your circumference. You know pi, it's always 3.14, but this time the unknown, the x, the one we're looking for, is the diameter. So how do I get the answer to diameter? Well, I need the diameter to be alone on this side. How can I get the diameter alone on this side using algebra? Bring this to the other side as a division. Because right now, it's a multiplication. Right now, it's this times this. For us to remove this, we need to divide it on the other side. Remember when we used to do algebra and we would do 4x equals 20? And I'd say, how do I get x by myself? Well, I used to say, well, because it's a multiplication, it needs to be a division. Yes? And therefore now I have x is equal to 5. Well, the same thing here. To get d by itself, just like we had to get x by itself, since they are being multiplied, we bring it over to the other side of the equal sign as a division. What's this line? It's a division line. This is 100. Take out your calculators. 100 divided by 3.14. Let's just say 31.8. And that would be the answer to this question. So let's do another one like this. Question number 2. What is the diameter if the circumference is equal to 150? Take a minute to do that. I don't want a calculator out because your answer will be wrong. Why would his answer be wrong right now? He didn't take a pencil first to write down the formula and replace the letters by the numbers I gave you, the values that I gave you. You need to do that. I understand that right now you can just punch in 2 numbers with a division sign and get your answer. But it gets much more complicated. You need to go through the steps. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write C equals pi times diameter. Then I'm going to look at my information and I'm going to say, oh, they gave me the circumference. So I'm going to put 150 here and realize that I can do something super simple to get the diameter. What can I do to get my diameter alone?
You have to divide.
Divide by?
3 decimal.
Exactly, by the pi. And once I divide, this is removed. And I'm left with, guess what? The diameter. So I take my calculator now. Now's a good time. What's the answer? 47.7. Boom. Done. 47.7 is the answer to this. Now, how about if I asked you for the radius? What would you do at this point? You would divide by 2. You would cut this in half. So you would make it 23.3. So all right. Guess what my next question is going to be? Question number 3. If the circumference is equal to 200 what is the radius? Now, don't get scared because you're like, hey, the formula doesn't have radius in it. Don't be scared. Find the diameter. Once you get the diameter, whoosh, in 2. Done? Do that now. Put your formula. C equals pi d. Do your formula. Replace the d. We don't know it. Replace the c by 200. Get your d. Once you have your d, cut it in half to get...
Excuse me, could you please send Peter Karatsiotis to the office just for a minute?
Yes. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of great answers. People are getting this. I'm so happy. We are going to finish up here by dividing by pi. What do we get for diameter? Diameter, what are we getting? 63 point. And what was the question? What was the radius? Are we there? Almost. Almost there. We have the longer of the two. So what do we do with this longer one? We divide it by 2. So the minute you cut it in half, you now have the radius. Perfect. So let's do one more example like this. Then we're going to do some practice on page 79. And then I see you again tomorrow, and we're going to continue with the arc, which is part of the circumference. So let's look here. One more example like this. I'm going to ask you to find the radius if the circumference is equal to 540 centimeters. What is the radius? Are you going to grab your calculator? No. Are you going to write down a formula? Yes. The formula you should use is C equals pi d. It's the only formula I've taught you so far. And guess how many formulas I'm actually going to teach you? There's going to be 2 formulas, and then there's going to be one that we have to work with. Yes? I don't know the answer, but I need everybody to write down C equals pi d. Please write this down first. Then the second thing I need to see is not the answer. It's putting the 540 where it belongs. It replaces the C. We know pi is always 3.14. What we are looking for is the diameter. And we can find it using algebra by removing the pi and having it be divided on this side. Now that I have diameter, what is the diameter? What is the diameter? 0.9 is the diameter. You would get part marks here. I would definitely give you, if this was out of 2, I would definitely give you 1. Because you did. What did you do for me? You did a lot. You gave me a formula. You filled in the formula. But you didn't quite give me the final answer, which was, what is radius? What is radius?
It's 171.2 divided by 2.
Divide by 2 would leave us with the radius of 85.6, and the unit is centimeter. So this is important as well. Yes? It could be slightly off depending if you are using 3.14 or if you are using a pi button. That's fine. I will accept both.